Good morning, everybody. My name is Phil Ike, and I am here in Wayland, Michigan for another episode of Michigan Main Street Stories with my two new friends, Holly and Jennifer. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning.
I'm going to have you guys introduce yourselves. So I'll ask you to give me your name and just tell us your role or what you do here in Wayland. Holly, you go first.
Yeah, my name is Holly McPherson, and I am the Executive Director of Main Street Wayland.
And Jennifer?
Jennifer Antel, and been on the DDA off and on over the years, and City Council.
And I will add, soon to be mayor. What got you into public community work, especially in this government capacity, Jennifer?
My master's degree is in public administration.
Really?
Yeah. Wanted to be a city manager when I grew up.
Now I feel really intimidated.
First job out of college was working for a DDA just south of here in Otsego, and then I went on to the city of Kalamazoo. Ended up stopping work for a number of years. Well, I did a lot of other things, but not that work, to raise our 5 kids. And when we moved to Wayland about 24 years ago, I wanted to use that part of my brain and that skill set. And so I applied for the Planning Commission, served on the Planning Commission for a few years, and then worked my way up to council.
Wow. I want to give you and everybody else, city councils, city managers, mayors, anybody involved in community government, just the utmost props. I mean, like if you do not work or communicate specifically with city council members, mayors, local officials, it can be really hard to understand what they go through, because I as a citizen, I'm kind of limited by my experience. I see things happening. I may not necessarily understand them, but man, the only reason you get into local community government is because you care about the community. It's not, definitely not for money or props or clout or anything like that. It's legitimately because you've got the thick skin needed to be able to make important decisions. And so I want to give you props, as well as every city council member, mayor across the country. Holly, how did you get into the Main Street world?
I actually went to school for interior design and architecture and worked in like customer service for a long time. But when I was in college, I realized I loved urban development, and I would do as much as I could based on urban development, studying cities. I remember when I was younger, that game Sims, not the people Sims, but the building the road Sims. I would play that for hours. Like, I want to build a city.
You know, there's a new like city simulator.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and
don't tell me I'm going to buy it.
Okay, I want to say it's just called Cities, but there's a really fascinating YouTube channel where a guy uses that city simulator to illustrate like urban planning concepts, like for like parking minimums. What he'll do is he'll build like a hospital, and he'll say, based on these codes, you need X amount of parking spaces, and he'll show how that's such a detriment to the communities. It's fascinating. Yeah. So you'll have to go buy it.
Yeah.
That's a brilliant way to show it, though, because you put stuff on paper, and a lot of people can't read plans and don't understand it, but you show it in 3D, and people can understand it.
Well, and I think the same too. Sorry, we're getting hijacked here, but I just love this. Well, I think the same too when I go out into communities and I fly the drone, and so one of the big issues in our communities is parking. We need more parking. We need more parking. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll fly the drone above a community, and I'll take this aerial shot of it. Yeah. And you can get this immediate visual of just how much parking there is.
Yes.
And some communities are hitting home runs, and you from the 300 feet up, you see density, and you see people walking around, and you see kind of the flow of things. And then other communities are in a situation where all you see is flat asphalt, and it's really hard to argue for more parking when all you see is just empty parking lots all over the place, and visuals like that I think could be so powerful. So sorry to hijack you. So you Sims, and you got interested in urban planning. Go.
Yeah. Well, I found out what a DDA was when I graduated college, and I was like, that is where I need to be. But I couldn't get in. I asked my mom. I was like, I want to go get my master's in urban development. She's like, oh, like you spent $100,000 in school. You're not getting anything.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
You're on your own, girl.
so I just took the jobs and worked it and got super involved. And my family's involved in all the city stuffs where they live and just volunteered. And then this job came open and I applied.
Jennifer, question for you. When did Wayland first become a Main Street?
I don't know the year off the top of my head, but I remember when it was happening. Bruce Patrick, who owns the brewery here, he and I were both on city council, and he was passionate about the downtown too. And we would talk all the time. And he's like, "Have you ever heard of Main Street?" And I hadn't at the time. And we talked about it quite a bit. And then he started talking to the DDA about it because we had an existing DDA. We just weren't on Main Street. And then also Mike Salisbury, he started talking to him, and then they put the group together and made the presentation, made the application. Bruce was a big part of that, and so was Mike. And I couldn't go with them when they went to Lansing to do their big presentation, but I helped with the application, and
Cool.
it was very exciting when we got it.
Yeah. Why was it exciting to kind of explore this program and do the pitch and bring Main Street into your community?
That's a great question, because DDA, like a lot of communities, DDAs kind of function or focus on the brick and mortar. Let's redo our sidewalks. Let's put in brick pavers. That's always a big thing. Let's do fancy lights. Let's put in benches. But making things look pretty doesn't bring people to your town. And Main Street really looks at the whole picture. And it was so exciting to see a structure of promoting a downtown, the historical, the getting people involved, the events. And I think sometimes you just need that structure. You have the passion. Everybody was excited about our town and loved it and loved the businesses, but just didn't know what to do about it. And the DDA was just paving roads and putting in streetlights.
Yeah. Holly, what about you? I mean, you're interested in urban planning. A lot of different directions you could go with that interest. Was there something specifically about Main Street and the program and kind of the structure of it that really got you intrigued and said, yeah, that's my wheelhouse?
Well, I actually started volunteering for Main Street before I got the job. I was on the work committee, so I was at one of the local ladies, Natalie, asked me to come to the volunteer dinner because she's like, I want you to get involved. And so I went and I met this lady named Vicky, and she knows so much. And she was talking about all these studies that she does. And I was just mesmerized. And then I went up to her afterwards. It's like, I want to do what you do. And she's like, good, because I want to retire.
Well, you're in luck.
So then I started volunteering, and then the job was open. She called me up. She's like, you need to apply, girl.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it was awesome just to see the different elements, I think.
Yeah. You have kind of this opportunity, I think, in Main Street to both do boots on the ground work, but then also you have these like 4 pillars and all of these different areas that you can play with, and it helps keep things interesting. You're not sitting in front of a computer, in front of a spreadsheet. I mean, I guess you could be if that's your jam, but you're just not locked in an office. You get to walk into businesses. You get to say, well, we want to do this project. We want to do this project. We want to create this event. So you get to play with all of these different things. And I love what you said, Jennifer, too, about like fancy pavers do not bring people into your downtown. Yes, it's an element of it. And when I was in Boyne City and Everett, they both kind of said similar things, is that you can do one thing really well, but if your marketing of that one thing is bad, that one thing isn't going to be as good as what it could be if you have the total package, if you're addressing all of these things. What kind of changes have you seen here in Wayland due to the Main Street program? What do you think has been the biggest benefit so far for your community of being part of the program? Jennifer first.
Well, one of the things that you don't, quote unquote, see is I love the education that Main Street brings to our business owners. The different workshops they provide on how to do effective social media, how to build a website, how to do online sales, how to build a beautiful window in your storefront to help draw people in, because we can bring people down with our events, that we have throughout the year. But if they don't walk through that front door for the first time, the event is not worthwhile to the businesses. And that's why we're bringing people down, not to see our pretty trees and our lights and, but they need to actually walk through that front door of a business the first time.
Yeah. Holly, what do you think?
Well, I think the kind of what she said, I talked to a business owner yesterday that just bought the business, and I have no idea how to do anything. And she's like, I just wanted to own a business when I was in middle school, and I got it finally in 30s, but I don't know what I'm doing. And so I just kind of was like, oh my God, Main Street's going to help so much or so much. And I ran back and just looked. I was like, there's so much out there for everyone. And also the training that they give to volunteers, where if they were just our volunteers, they wouldn't have that ability to have the training. And it's helped me a lot just getting into this job. I wouldn't know what I was doing very well without their help.
I think there's an inherent nature in our communities to kind of think like we are our own world. We are unique within the world. No one can help us through these things, or maybe we're just not aware that people can help us through these things. And I love that you both talked about the educational aspect of it, because imagine the goals that you have happening faster because you don't have to stumble your way through it, or you're not aware of a problem until it becomes a huge problem 30 years down the road. Imagine somebody coming in and say, you know what, we're going to help you be a better you, but faster than if you had to figure it out yourself. I mean,
Yes.
that's what we want.
Yes.
And it's such a gift, I think, in the Main Street program. I want to know about Wayland as a community. Holly, I'll ask you first. Tell me about Wayland as if I've never been here, and I've never been here, so you're in luck.
So what I've learned about Wayland through the years that I've lived here, and the many people I know, is that Wayland is a very close-knit community. I run into people who they have lived here for generations, and their great-grandma, great-great-grandparents own this land, and now they own this one, and everyone stays in it. But it's also growing, and that's what's really exciting, is that we're having a lot of families come in, a lot of new people, and it's very welcoming too. So where a lot of communities would be like, this is my town, I feel like Wayland is like, come enjoy the space that we have, because we've enjoyed it for years, and you'll enjoy it too.
That echoes the feeling I got over in Grand Haven, where you have tourists and visitors just shoulder to shoulder on the sidewalks there, but all the business owners I talked to had this real hometown feel where they're like, we are so proud of our community. We love that people want to come enjoy it too, and we're like, what a great feeling that is. Like you feel like part of the family, and it's just it's not weird. Jennifer, what, from your perspective, tell me about Wayland.
I love Wayland. My husband and I landed here because after we got married, I was working, and you'll hear this story over and over again of people that live here. I was working in Otsego and then the city of Kalamazoo, and he was teaching in Grand Rapids, and Wayland is halfway in between. And so that's why we landed here, also because we were attracted to the schools. And Holly is right. It is a small town, pushing on 5,000 now, city. So it's not a town, it's a city. But so it's great that it's close-knit, the idyllic neighborhoods, but it's big enough, and the school pulls from enough surrounding areas that our kids are offered amazing opportunities. And, we have an equestrian club. We have, an amazing orchestra. Actually, we have 2 orchestras in the high school. It's so big. They have these great opportunities, and yet you walk down the sidewalk, and I challenge you to not know someone. People will say hello. It's a great small town. It really is idyllic.
And speaking of small towns, Wayland is similar to many of our small towns, where you have 1900s and things are growing and buildings are going up. Some of the most beautiful buildings you can find in our small towns. And then through a period of like the 1950s push to the suburbs with suburban sprawl and the birth of the shopping mall, Minnesota. Thank you, Minnesota. No offense, I love Minnesota. I went to school in Minnesota, so I can say that. And then you hit this population decline where the draw is elsewhere, and we start losing vibrancy in our city centers. but now that pendulum is swinging and coming back. And Holly, that was something that you described Wayland as kind of the comeback kid. Why did you describe Wayland in that way?
Well, I think kind of what you said. I've always lived in small towns. I've admired them. I did move from Grand Rapids, so I have both that kind of perspective of a tiny town where you leave your cars and your keys in your car.
Yeah.
To where you're locking your car when you're getting gas. And so when I moved here, I've heard stories about how Wayland was really awesome, but the pandemic, just like everyone else, kind of really took the hit. And before it kind of, we had a little bit of a struggle with some of the DDA, and we had a great one. And then I think there was just kind of a mix where you didn't really get a strong one. And the volunteers were running mostly everything.
Right.
And I think the comeback kid came from the fact that not only do we have a strong group of volunteers on Main Street now, but the passion in the business owners is there. They are everywhere. They want this town to grow. The residents are doing as much as they can, doing where they can to make this town come back to what it used to be.
And what a beautiful segue to my next question with talking about what does it take to stage this comeback. And it sounds like you're really focusing in on it's the people and having pride and having passion is kind of the foundation. If you don't have that, you can't really stage a great comeback. So it's really about cultivating and letting those people lead and say, okay, let's make this thing happen. Yep. Jennifer, from your perspective, what do you think it takes to stage a comeback?
Well, you have to invest in the people and the businesses that are here. And it was tough during the pandemic, but as soon as our restaurants specifically were able to, at least do to-go food, man, there were people every day on Facebook, and you're talking to people, make sure you eat local, get takeout. And so we did once a week. Our family would rotate the different restaurants that we were ordering from, because you want them to still be there after the pandemic is over. I think it's going to be with us for a long time, and we're learning to deal with that. But the people who live here need to put their money where their mouth is. If they love their local businesses, they need to support them. And I think we have.
It was something that I initially started my career working directly with small businesses, and one of the great temptations in small business is to constantly chase new customers. It's always about how do we get more people. Meanwhile, you're missing those 3 regulars that stop by Monday, Wednesday, Friday for lunch, or that family that always comes in on Thursday nights for pizza. And because you're so focused on how do we get more, and I think communities can fall in the same temptation too. How do we attract a big corporate business that everybody wants, that's very visible? How do we get that business to come here? Meanwhile, you've got a lot of really great businesses and businesses that you can only find within that community. So when you said we have to invest in the people who are here, not only does that make sense, but two, just imagine being a business owner feeling like your community wants me here, values me to the point where they're willing to invest in me and promote me and help my business. Man, I'm going to wake up the next day running a 10 times better business. It's a win for everybody. I love that about Wayland. Another thing I love about Wayland is that you guys are addressing another challenge a lot of communities face in how do we pass the torch? We've got a great group of people right now making things happen, but if the next generation doesn't have that same value, we're back to trying to become a comeback kid. And so you are addressing that with a junior DDA. Who wants to tell me about that? Holly, go.
It was actually inspired by Lindsay from Charlevoix. They've had it for years. It's been successful. I talked to her. I saw what they did, the community, the owning the place. And
shout out to Lindsay Dotson.
Yes.
You're an all-star.
I love her. But I approached a local organization in the school and kind of went up to the board of students and the advisor, and I was like, hey, I think that this would be a great opportunity. We actually have a grant for one right now.
Wow.
I was like, I have money I can give you. And I laid out a 5-week program, and I said, you are going to go downtown and pick a project you guys think's best, and we will support you the whole way, and you guys drive it. And so the plan is every year now they will pick a project, and that will transfer. And it kind of plays off the fact that Wayland is a generation town where these kids will stay here because, well, not all of them, but most of them will. And it's the generations. And when you can say, my grandma did that, or my grandpa did that, this is creating that ability for people to look at Wayland as not just, this is a building, it's, I helped with that.
Yeah.
Jennifer, what do you think about this program?
I'm very excited. I was, when Holly and I sat down and talked after she was here for a while, I told her I was really excited because I also have substitute taught over the years for 13 years and love being in the school. And one day I was in the high school subbing for one of the teachers that the kids in that class had to do a project. They had to do a presentation. They had to pick a property in the downtown, and they had to do a pitch for a business, a new business. And they had to do market research. They had to do all this information. And I happened to be there the day they were making the presentations. And so many great ideas. I mean, kids think outside the box. And I went to the teacher. I went to a couple people in the school, and I said, I want some of these kids, and the ones you pick as the best ideas, to make a presentation to our DDA, to our city council.
Yeah.
And it didn't gain any ground. I was so frustrated because I loved their ideas. And I said, and we have a lot of this market research. We had Michigan Main Street did a market research. You should use that, give this to the kids to be able to use. And she wasn't aware of that. So I love it. I am so excited about having the kids involved because they are, when people complain about today's generation, I say, you don't know the kids.
Yeah.
I know.
When was the last time you talked to this generation?
Right.
Yeah.
I just the idea of this existential question, and how do we keep our kids here? And I tell people all the time is, well, the first step is you have to talk to them, listen to them, and engage with them before they turn 18 and can become an employee and pay taxes and things like that. But when we disregard them and their humanity for 18, 21, 25, 29 years, and then expect them to, well, where are those roots? You know, why don't you come back? And like, you missed a 30-year chance, man.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to go. I forget who gave me this quote, but it's such a great quote. People stay where they feel valued.
Yes.
And it's just so simple. And I heard another workforce development director, she said something about college students. How do we retain college students? And she said, if you're not there on moving day, you're too late.
Yes.
And it's just such a great point with this DDA is, if we value our kids and they feel that and they see that and we give them opportunities to own the community, why would they go anywhere else?
And one of the kids said to me, and it kind of hurt, but one of the girls looked at me and goes, finally, someone's listening to us.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. So they've had a lot to say for a very long time, but they didn't have a voice. And so, I'm really excited. We're not really giving them really any boundaries. I said it's limitless. I told them about placemaking, kind of gave them a little brochure to kind of create some ideas. And I said, have at it, girls. So
wow.
That's exciting.
I love it. I used to be a 5th and 6th grade teacher.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget this is another tangent. I'm sorry,
That's
but
all right.
I'm so excited about this conversation. So I 5th and 6th grade teacher, Where the Wild Things Are came out as a movie. And
My
I was
husband's
like,
favorite book.
I was like, this book is awesome. I'm going to take my kids to this movie. I told the staff that what I was doing. And one of the other teachers was like, what is the educational value of this? And I said, it's fun. So it took all the kids to Where the Wild Things Are, watched the movie, came back. There's 10 minutes left in the day. We were all pounding the rest of our candy and popcorn and things like that. And I was like, what did you guys think of the movie? And little Natalie Nitchman raises her hand. And I was like, Natalie? She's like, I really thought it was interesting how all the monsters in Where the Wild Things Are were like different parts of Max's personality. One was really shy, and one was really angry, and one was really like all these things. And it just blew my mind because I did not know that. I had never thought about it in this way. It just gave me goosebumps to see this 5th grader just dissect this thing in seconds.
Yep.
And that was really the moment where where I firmly became convinced how much we underestimate the potential contributions of kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's another rabbit hole.
Yes, please.
So when we were redoing our city park here in the center of town, I told the city engineer, I said, I really want kids to have a role in designing this. The kids are one's going to use it. Because my couple of my children had the opportunity to help design a couple of school playgrounds when we redid them.
Cool.
So he's like, we just don't have time. Long story short, in a few days, I got it organized, talked to all the principals. We had groups at all of the elementary schools. And we went in and I talked to the kids and got them all riled up. And then they got to either draw or talk and tell us what they wanted. And they came up with a theme. We designed it. The one thing we weren't able to do is one kid, because we have a water splash pad too.
Oh, yeah.
A kid wanted water to squirt up in the air, and then about 5 or 10 minutes later, the water come down in a different location every time. And I said, as soon as you figure that out, buddy,
Gravity's
you are a
an
millionaire.
issue, but I'm
You
not
will be a
saying no.
millionaire. But the kids, so that was probably 10 years ago. And so now I coach middle school, and kids will say, Coach Antel, do you remember? And I don't remember the kids all that were involved, but they remember, and they are so proud that they helped design that splash pad and that playground.
I love it. I want to hear more about some of the things you guys are doing here in Wayland. As I was driving in, saw some murals around the city. Tell me about that. Holly?
Well, I wasn't involved with the first one. I don't know if you were involved much with the first one.
No.
I know it was. It's on the north side of the Hotel Bar and Grill, and it was a local artist, and it was a volunteer led. It was a paint by number style, and during the Summer Fest, they had people come out, and people came out, and families and businesses, and they would just paint. And so we added another one on Dahlia City Dogs, and then the third one happened this summer. And so they all happen in the summer, paint by number style by an artist, and then the whole community comes and leaves a piece with them. And I hear people say, I painted that flower, you know? And so that's also another placemaking that we can add to the city. You know, you own that city, you own that flower because you help paint that flower, and it helps to create that sense of place.
The Great Mural Project in Saginaw does a similar thing with their public art projects as well. With how can we not only create public art but create another level of public engagement on top of it? And I think that's such a beautiful thing because it really doubles down on that word public in public art. Not only is it public in the sense like everybody can view it, I can walk down the street and see it, but now the public has had a hand in creating it as well, and it's just such a beautiful way to go about it. You just mentioned Summerfest.
Yes.
Tell me about Summerfest.
Summerfest happens every year here, and it's been happening for a very, very long time before DDA, before
Decades.
Main Street. Yeah.
Cool.
And you run into people who talk about it in the 70s and the 80s, and so it happens every year, and it's just a big festival. We shut down the whole Main Street, and we just bring in a bunch of activities, a bunch of concerts, and everyone just celebrates all summer long, all weekend long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all summer long.
yeah.
Just a little less
Yes.
squirrely. Yeah, I love almost the simplicity of the concept. Like there's no, and I'm not knocking events with themes because I think those are awesome too. But in this case, there's no theme, or it's not about a flower, or it's not about this thing, or this race. It's just like, hey, we've got something amazing here. Let's all just come hang out.
Yeah. And it serves almost everyone in the community, from children to everyone. And that's what I love. It's not just a concert. It's not just kids activity. It involves every single person.
Love it. One of the questions as this story series has evolved, one of the questions I've started asking during every podcast is about transformation, because I love locking in on buzzwords and current jargon and like really dissecting it and say, well, what does this actually mean? And transformation is one of those words. And if you use transformation, I still think you're a great person, because I use it too. Just disclaimer there. But I think it's important to talk about that there is such a thing as good transformation and bad transformation. Transformation is not inherently good, and good transformation can actually be bad. So, Jennifer, I'm going to ask you first. What makes good transformation good, and what makes bad transformation bad?
Wow. Good transformation is when it is benefiting everyone involved. You know, the citizens gain from it, you know, whether it's a new business in the downtown, and then that business is also benefiting its neighbors. Bad transformation is when maybe only one person is benefiting and the rest are not.
Yep. Holly, what are your thoughts?
I believe that bad transformation, and I'm going to start with bad transformation first, is the city ignoring the needs of the community to create a city that they believe is utopia. I don't believe that every city is exactly alike because that's just not the way the world works. So we can't say, you know, this city did this and that's so cool, because it might not resonate with anyone here and it could just flop and then we spent all this money. So I think if that's bad transformation, but good transformation is saying, this is Wayland and this is what our citizens want and this is what's going to make us better. It's not what everyone else is doing, but this will be successful because this is who we are as Wayland. That's good transformation.
I just did a podcast interview in Everett yesterday. Came here from Everett, and Todd, the director there, said something, or maybe it was Boyne City. It was Boyne City also yesterday. It's just like a whirlwind tour of like, I just get in the car, MEDC tells me drive there. But what we talked about in Boyne City with Michelle Courtwright specifically, I believe she said this was, and Jordan, I believe, chimed in here too, was that idea of inclusive transformation. And as soon as they started talking about it, the image in my brain was almost like a ripping apart of a community, because here this segment of the community is being transformed and they're killing it, loving life. You know, they're feeling uplifted and they're living, the high quality of life is improving. But meanwhile, this group of people, whether it's race or salary level, income level, or whatever it is, they're still here. And so, yes, these people and their lives are improving, but meanwhile, this gap in between is becoming, at one point, a solvable gap. And then over years or whatever, now it becomes, I don't want to say an impossible gap, but a pretty darn close impossible gap to try to fix. And the problem becomes complicated. And that's because we thought all transformation is good transformation. And yeah, we're rolling. Look at all this. Look at all this. And then meanwhile, we've neglected part of our community. And Holly, what you said about really reaching into the community to figure out how to move it forward is such a beautiful idea, because it's really easy to kind of say, well, we need this and we need this and we need this, and then we inflict these good ideas for other communities onto our communities and turn them into bad ideas.
And a lot of people have talked to me too about Wayland, and it's like people have just tried to change Wayland but don't change it. You know, you can make Wayland better. There's a lot of options, but I think if you change it, then people won't come downtown, people won't shop, the stores will struggle. And so it's embracing who Wayland is and then building on it to make it better.
I love it. When we also talk about transformation, I want to make sure that we're not stating the case that Main Street is the sole source of transformation within the community, and you know but it really lives within a vacuum, and I think having both of you guys here is a great visual representation of that, because we've got Main Street program, soon to be mayor of the community, and that's not always the case. With not just between Main Street and government, but like government and some other community organization. They don't see eye to eye. They don't work together. They don't sit across the table from each other. Things get really weird. And things like that. So Jennifer, you first. Main Street does not live within a vacuum. Who are the other community partners? Who else is responsible for moving this community forward?
Well, the business owners is an obvious answer, but also council, planning commission, they play a role in the planning and what's going to go where, and where can we be flexible, where should we not be flexible. I think the school plays a huge role. You know, the school is our biggest employer.
Oh, wow.
Bring in a lot of people from out of town every day for school, for sports. You know, they're probably our number one economic development attractor. Yeah. And
Wow.
and some people don't think of the school as a business, but it is. You not only have the teachers, the rest of the staff, coaches, people coming to visit for sporting events. Yep. I mean, it's a huge attraction, and we need to make sure that we're including them in the conversation of what we're doing with our community.
That's such a good point. I mean, you look on every community Facebook group or page, and people all the time make a post like, hey, I'm about to move into the community. How are the schools?
Yes.
Or how are the schools? How are the schools? How are the schools? How are the schools? And so if we leave them out of this conversation, this greater community conversation, we're doing a giant disservice.
Yeah.
Holly, what about you? Who's so critical to the Main Street success, to the community's success?
I agree with you with the schools. I think when it came to Main Street and DDA, I think there's kind of, even the city, a little divide between the schools that needs to be repaired. But I also believe that the volunteers are huge. I look at, not even like Main Street, just what they do for the city is unbelievable. These people volunteer their time just to do this, to help move forward, plan it. We have volunteers who are committed year round, but then when we're like, hey, we need someone to help with trash, people step up, like little things like that. Also the city, like you said, you know, the manager, the city clerk, even Denise with the chamber, it's a huge entity that just wants to make Wayland better. And those guys are doing great things.
Isn't it great when communities, everyone involved, it feels like we're all moving in a similar direction, not the same direction, but all in a very similar direction.
Yeah.
I mean, the momentum is there, the feeling is there, the vibes are there, as opposed to the opposite of that. I think about Sheboygan. When I went up to Sheboygan, there's I'm going to butcher the name. I'm sorry. Like, Get It Sheboygan or Bring It Sheboygan. I'm sorry, guys. It was about a few weeks ago. But the woman who ran that, they ended up with 500 volunteers in Sheboygan with a city of 5,000.
Wow.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
I mean, just like if you want a snapshot of the amount of community pride, you look at your volunteers. And I'm not saying like numbers is the sole indicator of that, but people that are willing to pick up other people's trash, those are people that love this place.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, they're not like somebody should pick up that trash. They walk out the door and they pick it up, or they help run these events that we all love. I get to go gorge myself on pulled pork and beer. Meanwhile, that volunteer has been up since 1:30 cooking it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
It's huge.
Yeah.
Finally, when you guys look into the crystal ball of Wayland's future, and I'm just asking you to speak from your personal perspectives. Of course, there's public engagement and working with community, but Jennifer, you first. When you look into the crystal ball of Wayland's future, what do you want to see? What do you see happening? Tell me about that.
Something that I've been working on for about 17 years now that I see happening in the next 10 for sure. I'd like to say sooner, but let's be realistic. We've been working on a trail, a non-motorized trail on the old interurban. It's the Consumers Energy right-of-way now that will connect Kalamazoo to Grand Rapids. And it's the only segment missing that you will then be able to go from Battle Creek to Cadillac, and then pretty soon the bridge. Somehow Allegan County is missing in that regional network. And that will be a game changer for Wayland. Non-motorized transportation, biking, running, hiking is one of Michigan's #1 tourist attractions. And we're the number one in trails in the nation. And we're missing right now. And as soon as we can connect to that network, it's just a block out of our downtown. It'll be huge for us. I'm very excited about the transformations that will make for us.
It'll be sooner than 10 years. I feel it in my bones. Holly, what about you, crystal ball?
Well, I think one thing that it's going to happen in Wayland, it's growing. I think a lot of people are moving out of the big towns and the suburbs of the big towns and moving to a little farther away, small towns. And I think like you came to Wayland because it was halfway between Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo. It's going to grow. And I think that with that growth, we're also going to see a vibrant downtown come back to life. There's a lot of little niches missing that make people leave the city for certain things. And I think if we can bring those, Wayland can be such a awesome town to just hang out in, live in, get everything you need in, spend your time, walk around, kind of like what you were saying too. People are going to come to Wayland just to be.
I love it. I love you guys. I love Wayland. I love this conversation. If people want to check Wayland out on the internet, where would they go? Website, social media? Tell me about that.
Downtownwayland.com is our website. And then Downtown Wayland Main Street is our Facebook.
Awesome. So people check out Wayland on the internet, but then hop in your car, drive over to Wayland, maybe trudge through what will be the future trail.
Get on your bike and ride here.
Yeah, and get on your bike and ride here to really experience the community in person, because that's the best way to experience our communities here in the Michigan Main Street Story Series. I want to thank you, Holly, and you, Jennifer, for spending time with me today in this fascinating conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.